Hello and welcome to the home of the Ghost Owl, and we're back with some Warhammer The Old World news. Looks like we're going to have quite a bit of news on the Orc and Goblin's new faction release announced on Sunday, with a look at what is coming for Warhammer The Old World, and it is the Orcs and Goblins. So we had a video looking at the what's coming up in terms of pre-order, and now there's another article which has come up on Monday, the 18th of March, which is the Old World Almanac. And we're slightly behind time because, yes, I am back on the road again. I spent all day on Monday in an aeroplane, and now I'm in a hotel recording these latest videos. So let's see what's in the Old World Almanac article, which is Orc and Goblin Tribes, the Arcane Journal. So we've already seen Arcane journals coming out for the Tomb Kings and also the Bretonnians, so we know roughly what these things are going to have in terms of magic items, named characters, maybe even some special units. But this is a special article, and see if there's anything different for our green friends. So, Orcs, Goblins and Trolls. We saw with previous Arcane journals, there's an expanded background on what the Orc and Goblins are up to, which is good. Lore is always good. It's always nice to, especially given that we're kind of in a new period, new setting. And when we looked at previous lore of the period that we had in previous editions, it was pretty light in this time frame. So there are videos covering what was there before, but now we're getting new lore, and eventually we will get round to doing videos on that new lore. However, we're covering the factions first. So we're seeing 2 new special characters and 2 bespoke armies of infamy. So that's pretty standard for an Arcane journal by the looks of it. So we're not getting a ton of special characters. It's a bit of a shame. I actually like named characters. And, you know, the interesting thing I think with named characters, if we look at previous editions like Warhammer Fantasy, the named characters that were in the books weren't necessarily tied into the timeline that 8th edition, for example, was setting. You know, Vlad von Carstein was a named character in the book, as was Count Manfred before he became a full-on, or Manfred the Acolyte, sorry, before he became a full-on Count. So these were actually special characters from historical times of Warhammer lore, and it would be nice to start seeing that in the Old World. However, I think, you know, they've got a lot to do. They're essentially re-releasing the game, re-releasing factions, tons of miniatures, tons of things to do. So, you know, I don't mind that we've only got 2 characters now. I just hope in the future, as these factions grow, as they potentially get re-released or get new miniatures, that one, we see some more special characters, because I quite like them. I think they're fun. They add stuff to the game. And I also hope they don't get time-locked. There's no need to get time-locked with these characters, because we haven't needed that in the past. So, continuing on, though. So we've got new magic items, a narrative scenario, follows on from the story, new lore of magic focused on the sorcerer's abilities of the troll hags who conjure up swamp magic. That's pretty cool and nice and flavourful. Trolls are fundamentally and inherently magical creatures. They regenerate when you cut them. Chaos and magic, chaotic magic in the Old World. Yeah, okay, nothing particularly new in that. Stupidity, yep, that's a rule we've seen before. And the stupidity is one of the reasons why I'm not the biggest fan of trolls. I mean, trolls have a lot of good points, right? You know, they have regeneration, you know, they can be quite powerful and they're quite durable. But the stupidity, and given what it does, you can see here, you know, you don't have control of its movement. You can't march, you can't declare a charge. So you can have this unit which can get expensive, and so that can cause a problem, and your expensive unit becomes stupid, and then you completely lose control of it. So I'm not someone that likes trolls on the tabletop. I like the principle of them, of course, but for me, I don't tend to use them that much, and it's mainly because of this rule. I mean, there are ways to mitigate it, of course, but you'll tend to find me more in the camp of Black Orcs and Night Goblins. Okay, Yes, stupidity is a force organizer, and they're absolutely right. It is, sorry, force equalizer. They're absolutely right with that. Trolls would be amazing if they didn't have something like stupidity to rein them back in. So even the troll hag has stupidity because she's still a troll, which is interesting. So, you know, you've got this sort of main character, which even her is subject to stupidity. It'll be interesting to see what her leadership is, though. 2 armies of infamy. You've got the nomadic war, which is a tried and tested classic, an all-mounted tribe of orcs and goblins. That would be really cool. Well, I'm not normally one for like individual chariots. I like chariot units, but you know, I could certainly see units of goblin wolf riders, orc boar boys, supported by chariots. That could be fun. That could be really fun. The other one is a troll horde. It's not something that appeals to me, but nice to give people different options. And I think it would be pretty cool. You know, your river trolls, your stone trolls, basic trolls, all of that. You know, fun to have something different. Though personally, I would have preferred something that was more goblin specific, in particular night goblins, but you know, I guess that's too close to Age of Sigmar's Gloomspite Gits. So, a little bit bummed that it's just a troll horde. There's nothing specific for goblins, or you know, or a forest goblin theme. But you know, maybe we'll see that in the future. Okay, so we've got the hag. You've got Ogdra's Swamp Digger, who's an orc shaman who thinks he's a troll. We didn't see him. I don't remember seeing him in the pre-release. Isn't he? He's the guy that has like the troll's head on top of him or something, isn't he? I think. Yeah, I didn't see him in the pre-release. Maybe he's coming in the second wave, and I'm absolutely sure there will be a second wave, if not a third wave, depending on how many come out in each wave. Certainly, if we look at Bretonnian's Tomb Kings, there's going to be 3 waves there, so you'd expect something similar for the orcs and goblins. Okay, right, some nice pictures. There we go. We've got our stone trolls, we've got our normal trolls, we've got river trolls, troll hag out there, so there's a big troll force there. Right. Okay, Nomadic War relies a lot on Goblin Wolf Riders. It lets you take them in close order to rank them up, and you can use them as fast, aggravating missile troops if you tool them up with short bows, feigned flight, reserve move. They're amongst the best light cavalry in the game. And that's really cool. Like I say, I think this looks really fun to play. I don't necessarily think it's going to be massively overpowered, I have to say, but I do think it's going to be really, really fun to play. Yeah, I like this a lot. I like this. This is a really good theme. Okay, so they are impetuous. So yeah, they've got some good rules in there, but they do have impetuous, which obviously, you know, can, again, it's movement. It's losing control of movement, and that's probably the thing I like the least. But this is Orcs and Goblins, and it's still got to be fun, right? Swiss stride, 9-inch movement. They've got a hell of a charge range, which is absolutely true. All right, troll magic. Not much in there. By no means is every faction getting a new law. So that if you're thinking every faction is going to get a new law, they're not. So they clearly make that there. Keeping it limited, which is good. I don't want magic to become too dominant. I know a lot of people have got different thoughts about magic, and whether you agree or not with the way they've implemented magic to cast it, in terms of what the spells do, and we did have a whole series of videos on the laws of magic in the main rulebook, I currently like where they are. They, you know, it's there, it can have an impact. There's definitely some strong combos in there, but it doesn't feel overbearing. And I come at this, you know, having last played a rank and file Warhammer Fantasy game in 8th edition, where I honestly felt magic, the actual spells themselves were too powerful. Personal opinion. I know lots of people got different opinions on that, and I know why it was done. It was to counter some of these really big, terrifying units. But that, you know, for me doesn't really cut it in terms of the rule set. But I like where magic is, so I like they're trying to keep it reined in and only put in where necessary. Okay, enough of magic. Let's move on. Right, so you've got Ogdra's Swamp Digger, Orc Shaman. Yeah, so he thinks he's a troll. Okay. He's the only shaman who has access to troll magic without spending points on magic items. Okay. He has regeneration, so he's quite survivable for a wizard. That's pretty good for a wizard. He buffs trolls. Okay, even if he's not the general. Okay. So yeah, it's interesting. Ogdra Swamp Digger, given his flavor for trolls, I'm not going to be using him. I'm not going to have use for him in my armies, but he's there, and obviously will be key for an army that has plenty of trolls in it. Okay, so what's next? It's fair to say that Warhammer the Old World is here to stay. That's good news. At least, when a company says here to stay, we're probably good for 12 months. We've got a wonderful time period to explore. Not wonderful for the people living there, but from a storytelling perspective. Right, so in my mind, there's two reasons why this is a wonderful time period to explore. The first is the lore of this period is incredibly light, so they have a lot of freedom to do what they want. And of course, you don't have a united empire, and they've gone back in time, so you don't have your colleges of magic, and there are certain units that don't feature because they're not there yet, but you still have some of the flavorful things. You're still far enough in time that you have things like steam tanks and some of that stuff. So yeah, I agree. It's an interesting time period to explore. They haven't gone too far back. It's obviously not too close to what became of the end times. Let's not speak about that. But let's face it, one of the reasons why this time period was chosen was also because there was no existing law, or that there was no significant existing law of this time period. Okay, 9 core factions. Yes, that's a lot of models to bring back, and we can't do that all at once. Absolutely makes sense. I've said it before, I'll say it again. They did not have stocks of these models lying around, unlike a lot of people I think may think. We all know Games Workshop has had huge warehousing and stocking problems. They continue to have huge warehousing and stocking problems, and I think it's very apparent in the old world, but I think it is also apparent in some of the other game systems as well. So it would be nice if they sort those out, but with that in mind, if you've already got stocking and warehousing problems, introducing whole new factions with all these models, it is a lot of work. And let's face it, a lot of these tools, the tooling that you make the miniatures with is going to be old. It's probably, a lot of it either has to be replaced. We've seen a lot of them talk about that. They're even changing the material with some of these miniatures, going away from metal, going to forged wood resin, going away from fine cast, going back to metal, all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of work that goes into that. So totally agree with that. The painting team would crumble at that point. I'm not sure about that. I think they've probably got a whole stack of models that are pre-painted already. I would suggest this is more supply chain manufacturing issues. Right, there is a mountain yet to climb with our plans for the old world, even with so many people working on it, including in the factories, the painting, the photography studios, and even the box design. The amount of plastic, metal, and resin we need to bring back for 9 factions is a lot, and it's going to take us a long time. Absolutely. Even if we are lucky enough, and I think we will be lucky, we've seen the first faction release 3 months after the game release, right? There's 9 factions in total, so in 2 weeks' time, we'll have 3 factions released. That leaves 6 factions every 3 months. You're into, and that's if you're lucky with every 3 months. You're into 2 years plus, right, if you're lucky, to get all of that out. And that's just releasing what they have now in terms of the main factions, the 9 of them. So, and that's assuming they aren't going to introduce, if they were going to then do a second release of each army after a couple of years, let's assume there's no edition changes. Let's assume it's a bit more like Horus Heresy. You don't get very quick edition changes like 40k and Age of Sigmar, which tend to be every 3 years. Then, if you're going to re-release each army, that's another 2 years. You could be 4 years to really get each faction into a solid place, which is a long time. But, this isn't their main product, let's face it, as much as we'd all love it to be. It's not, and there's a finite amount of resource and a finite amount of time. Right, okay, moving on. The game has been incredibly well received. It's great there's so much passion, the scope of the project has grown, so please bear with us. This is interesting. So the game has been incredibly well received. I think it has been massively more well received than they anticipated. I think they maybe thought this was going to hit and fizzle out. I think there's probably there's a combination of things for that. I think it's been long enough for a lot of people that suffered at the end of 8th edition with the closing down of the game system. Believe me, I had large Tomb King and Bretonnian armies, and I was not best pleased. And in fact, the closing down of Warhammer Fantasy, and while I still played 40k, I couldn't get into Age of Sigmar, and it was actually what led me to really go out to the marketplace and actually play a lot of other game systems. And so, Games Workshop actually kind of lost a customer, and I was spending my money elsewhere. But, time has passed. I still love the lore. I still enjoy playing 40k. I enjoy playing Heresy and some of the other stuff as well. So I wasn't, completely off Games Workshop, but a lot of time has now passed, and they're bringing this back, and I want to play it. I want to play with my miniatures from past, and I think there's a lot of people in that position. I think there's a lot of people, newer people that have come into the hobby that have heard about this, and they want to give it a go. And I think there's people out there as well. We shouldn't forget. I think the impact that Warhammer Total War, the video game, has had. There's a lot of people out there who have played that video game, probably never picked up, probably never played a tabletop game before, and if they have, they probably haven't played Warhammer Fantasy. I really think that was one of the biggest mistakes Games Workshop ever did, which was having a very successful Warhammer Total War game, but no game system to combine with it. What a loss of sales. But they can potentially now capitalize on some of that as well. So I think it's been massively better received than they expected. And the scope of the project growing, what does that mean? Who knows? We really don't want to read into too much. They've made quite clear statements. Will they row back on these statements? Yeah, of course. We've seen Games Workshop row back on clear statements before when enough support has been shown. But, who'd have thought, Plastic Sisters back in the day? Who'd have thought Leagues of Votan, essentially squats, coming back to the game? Who'd have thought Bretonnians and Tomb Kings coming back to the game? So Games Workshop will change decisions. But, and I will say this, there is no indication right now that legacy factions are going to be supported in any way, beyond what they are, beyond what's already been said. I think the best thing we can do, and believe me, I really want to see vampire counts back, I really want to see Dark Elves and Skaven and those factions back properly in the game, but let's be under no illusion, if they ever were to come back in the game, while you can leverage Age of Sigmar models, we still don't know what this whole issue of Age of Sigmar versus Warhammer the Old World is, why they're reluctant to leverage that, given the models already exist. We don't know the factual reason. There's lots of speculation, but no factual reason, no statement for it. And I think if we do start to see anything from legacy factions, I think we are a long way off, and I mean multiple years. I think at best, after the 9 factions are released, at least through once, we might start to see a few made-to-orders for some old models of Warhammer, the Vampire Count, Skaven, and so on, if the tooling is there. So it's interesting they say the scope has grown. That could just mean more resources to do things with the existing factions. So we'd all love to read into more, but we're into absolute speculation and not pinches of salt. I mean whole massive handfuls of salt as to whether that would ever happen. We aim to do this forever. Well, every business says that, we'll see. We have planned books for the next redacted years. So, yeah, planned books, 2 years, 4 years if they're going to re-release every faction at least. A lot of companies work on a 3 to 5 year plan. So that's probably where they're at. We have all these miniatures planned and clear ideas of what we're working towards. And I say 3 to 5 years, that still keeps you in the 9 faction range. But we have to get there. Yep, we're reintroducing the world and the setting over the course of 9 Arcane journals. Yep. Once that's done, who knows? Again, suitably vague. unexpectedly vague from a business that's made clear statements. I really would love, my mind is sat there going, oh, I'd love to speculate on this and say, yeah, that means that once that's done, who knows, is the marketing spin we're going to get over the next 12 to 18 months, and then in 18 months' time, we're going to get a new statement saying the legacy factions are in. Yes, I'd love that to be the case. This is suitably and expectedly vague from a business. Don't get too excited yet if you're looking for these legacy factions, and I think you're going to be stuck with Age of Sigmar models and third-party models for quite some time. So I think we just have to accept that. And that's it. That's the end of the article. So tomorrow they'll be looking at how orcs are intended to play, why Impetuous is better than Animosity. Okay. And it's perfect for when the Made to Order comes out, bringing back a range of classic stone and river trolls. More on that later in the week. So there you go. So on top of what we've already seen for the release, there's going to be a Made to Order, which is going to bring back classic stone and river trolls. So a pretty sizable release for the Greenskins. And I think if you are a Greenskin fan, so far you should be pretty happy. I think the one thing I'm missing is I'd like to see some Black Orcs. I can get my Night Goblins already. There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy it, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Let me know why in the comments down below. And as always, if you want to see more content, hit that subscribe button. It means a lot for me, and it takes a few seconds, and it's totally free for you to do. So I really, really appreciate it, and thank you to all those who have already hit that button. You've been watching The Ghost Owl, and I'll see you all very, very soon.